So what's up guys, welcome to this video, and in this video I'm going to give you a presentation of the current coronavirus. And it's not on the virus, by the way, it is on how to deal with it when it comes to your training, the progression you want to make, maintaining to your muscle mass. And the reason being was I'm currently in contest preparation for my shows, and also my clients are dealing with this same problem, not of contest preparation, but the problem of not be able to train in a gym environment. So not having the equipment, not having the fundamental things that we have in the gym. So how do we solve that problem to making sure that we are not losing strength or not losing muscle mass? And oftentimes now on the internet, of course, there is a huge wave of information and a huge wave of influencers and all that stuff of home workouts. And most of them is not succeeding in the setup of the workouts and how they are being done in preserving your muscle mass in the first place. We have to know what goes on in the body. We have to know what is minimally needed in order to sustain to your muscle mass, but also how you can keep on training in your home on a creative way. So this is exactly what I'm going to talk about in this presentation. I hope you like it. If you like it, please thumbs up, comment below, and share it with as many people as possible, because this is the big question nobody can answer, and I've digged into it for myself and also for my clients. So that's the reason why I've constructed this presentation together. Enjoy and keep up them gains, stay healthy, and keep on training. Let's go. Welcome in today's video about the COVID-19 training strategy, where we are going to talk about the home training protocols for holding on to your muscles. As we all know, current coronavirus has, made us or forced us a little bit in a lockdown where we are not able to train inside the gyms. So this is the reason why I have made this presentation, to see what you can do to hold on to your muscles in the first place. So let's keep on going with this presentation, and I hope you're going to enjoy it and I hope you are going to enjoy it. So a little bit about myself, for all of you who have entering this video and are not aware of who I am. My name is Rico van Huizen. I am the owner of Royal Body's Natural Bodybuilding and Fitness. I coach people all over the world, getting into their goals when it comes to gaining muscle, weight loss, doing competitions and stuff like that. I'm a dad, 29 years old. Yeah, it's damn old. Time flies by. Unbelievable. Lifetime natural bodybuilder, European champion, third of the world in 2014. 14 years in the game already. I'm known from the documentary I Am Natural Bodybuilder that you might have seen on YouTube. If not, highly recommend to check it out. So let's start the presentation itself. In uncertain times, go with what you are certain of. Wow. Big quote. So what we're going to discuss in this particular presentation is the detraining and its effect. The difference between reduced training and complete detraining, so no training at all. Detraining and its impact on strength. Detraining and its impact on muscle retention, which most of you are interested in. And your true hero of peace, called satellite cells. Don't get too hung up with the terminology. I will explain everything, so don't worry. And why detraining can be a good thing. What about reduced training? How much is needed to prevent muscle loss? We're going to talk about home workouts for muscle retention in terms of volume, intensity, frequency, repetition, duration, and rest. The setup programming for home workouts and the 7-step process to perfection. So let's get on it. Detraining and its effects. The detraining is a period where no physical training is involved, partially or completely, and in this case, weightlifting. It is a period where performance adaptations in response to an insufficient training stimulus may be lost, as well in the anatomical and physiological, so as well in the muscles or inside the muscles. Regular training results in several physiological adaptations that enhance athletic performance, and stopping or reducing training induces a partial or complete reversal of these adaptations, compromising athletic performance. And this is what we call reversibility principle. What it basically says is that, whenever you do a workout, go to the gym and stuff like that, you grow your muscles, you become stronger, but whenever you're gonna stop that completely or reducing it a little bit, it can start a process of, where these things become reversed, that performance is gonna drop, that muscles gonna be lost and stuff like that. So let's take a look at the difference between reduced training and complete detraining. On the left, we have a beautiful picture of a lady lifting a 4-kilogram dumbbell, just to show you that she's just, using a dumbbell that is very light. On the right, we have a person completely sleeping. So it is important to understand, the difference between reduced training and complete detraining. And reduced training refers to a short reduction in quantity of training, which can improve many of the positive physiological and performance adaptations gained with training. This is also called a taper or a deload. And this method is an attempt to reduce the physiological and psychological stress of daily training and optimize sports performance. Then we have the complete detraining. So no training is involved, but normal daily activities are remained. So whatever you do on a day outside the gym is going to be maintained. To this, I would add another form of which is now the case with the current coronavirus and no accessibility to gyms. And it's what I call the extreme reduced weight training. And the reason for adding this to the current detraining statements is obvious. In reduced training, a short reduction in quantity of training is the methodology, which is simple, a small reduction of the quantity of training. And this means that a lower volume, like let's say 10 to 20% volume reduction in the form of less sets, less reps, may be performed in order to do a taper or deload. But with the general population and the current coronavirus, we can't find equal weights in our home to facilitate that 10 to 20% reduction in weight to call it a taper or a deload. So hence the reason why I called it extreme reduced weight training. And no, I am not saying body weight training, bruv. Get it? So for example, let's say you're squatting 100 kilograms during regular training periods, and in the taper, you would lower that with the 10 to 20% weight reduction using a 80 to 90 kilogram weight and call it a day. Well, good luck in finding a 80 to 90 kilogram alternative in your home. Maybe you should try the fridge. So let us now see what the difference is in compounds versus isolation. Although compound movements tend to be executed in the gym with higher weights, let's say 100 kilogram bench press or a 100 kilogram squat, there's a good chance that you can mimic the isolation movements inside your house. You can definitely lift a 16 kilogram chair for bicep curls or bodyweight tricep dips between two chairs. As you can see, the real problem is the compounds, the heavy-ass ironclad makers. And this will be the hardest part to mimic and don't experience any performance reduction. And it's the reason why you see this beautiful chap here, lifting a fridge on his marathon. And it's actually real. This is not a joke. But as you can see, taking things to an extreme. So let's take a look at the detraining and its effect on strength. In one study, they have tested the detraining effect in a 48-week study duration. And in group A, they set them up for a 24-week training program, followed by a 3-week detraining, so no strength training at all. And after this 3-week detraining, they would continue till week 48. So this would be happening between week 27 and week 48. So they would continue with the training program. And in Group B, they as well were set up for a similar 24-week training program, but they were insisted to have a detraining period by week 24 till week 48, so no training at all. And Group A found no change in the 1RM during the 3-week detraining, but Group B experienced 6% decrease of 1 rep max in middle-aged 35 to 45-year-old men. Now, this study suggests that a 3-week detraining would have no effect on strength levels, but when prolonged, it will have effect on strength. So whenever it was extended beyond the 3 weeks, it would see a reverse effect on strength. So it would lose strength. Now, the 2-3-week reducing strength training volume was also seen in another study. Here, the performance would even increase or at least remain stable. As you can see in the table on your right, we have the line, the white dots, that is the group who consistently trained without breaks. And the black dots represent the group who were taking 3 weeks, detraining. But as you can see, who took the 3-week detraining, and they would be training from week 9 to week 15, another 3-week detraining, and proceed with that setup. Now, non-significant reductions in bench press and squat were observed after 2 weeks without training. So 2 to 3 weeks reducing strength training volume or detraining had no impact on strength loss. It even increased or at least remained stable, suggesting that even breaks from the gym is as effective like going constantly with no rest. Now, non-significant reductions in bench press and squat were observed after 2 weeks without training, and a follow-up study was to observe long-term effects of detraining, which lasted longer than 4 weeks. Now, the force production of strength has been shown to decline by 7 to 12% during inactivity periods ranging from 8 to 12 weeks. Now, this decline can be explained by the loss of EMG activity. Don't mind the terminology here. Now, the EMG is a method to measure the activity of a particular muscle. And in addition to the reductions of muscle mass and high percentages of recently acquired strength gains are maintained for at least 12 weeks, even with stoppage of training. So what this suggests is, if you get an increase in strength, becoming stronger, that would last for 12 weeks. I don't know if this 12 weeks is really what is going to happen, to be honest. So I have my question marks here. But, this is some of the data. And in another study in young women, they have looked at a group, followed a 20-week training program, followed by a 30 to 32-week detraining, and subsequently retrained for 6 weeks. So no training at all for 30 to 32 weeks. And after the detraining, significant decreases were found in the leg press with 32% and extensions with 29%. And all detraining values were still significantly greater than the pre-training values. This is an important one. So all the gains that they have made in the 20-week period of training from this study, and whenever they did the 30 to 32 week no training at all, they tested again their strength, and still their detraining values were higher than before the 20-week program they started. So after this, the retraining of 6 weeks resulted in 1 rep max values similar to those obtained at the conclusion of the 20-week training program. So within 6 weeks, they were training again, after the long period of detraining or no training at all. And they were actually getting back to the 1 rep max similar from those 20-week training they did, with improvements seen from subsequent 7-week training period. So when they prolonged their retraining period with 6 weeks, in total of 13 weeks, so let's say 3 months, they were actually getting stronger over time. So even at 30 to 32 week detraining, there is a decrease, but it is quickly back to baseline levels within 6 week training and even improving for the following 7 weeks. Now this also reminds me the time that it took me to come back from a 3-month detraining period after the birth of my son, which it took me 3 months to get back to baseline levels. So this is, consistent with my own observation with myself. So I can say that this is exactly what happened to me. Now, detraining and its effect on muscle. There's one study where 2 subjects were investigated. Both followed a 2-month training program. One of them continued training for the next 5 months, and the other did nothing for 5 months. And here are the results. So if we look at the table here, we can see the measures. Subject EG, so the left part of all the information, the numbers, is the one who did the 5-month training, and on the right side we have the person who didn't train the next 5 months. And what we can see in the change in muscle mass is that subject AM on the right side was dropping his muscle mass. Also, if you go two rows up, you can also see lean body mass tissue, the loss of lean body mass. Now, a study found in an elite powerlifter that there was a detriment in fast twitch fibers over the course of 7 months detraining, so no training for 7 months. And there was over 41% atrophy, which is muscle loss, was observed. And by the way, the fast twitch fibers are the fibers we most often use with strength training. So we have fast twitch fibers and slow twitch fibers. Slow twitch fibers more used like marathon runners and stuff like that. But training itself is more of the fast twitch fiber. And in one other study with rats, they looked into the factors that can cause muscle to become resistant in growing by constant exposure of training. And it showed that after 12 days of detraining, so no training at all, complete rest, there was a recovery period restoring the signals for growth without significant muscle loss, suggesting that attenuated specific anabolic responses can be recovered after a short-term detraining period without morphological changes to muscle. So this tells us that it is not that evil to have some detraining going on for further progress. It tells us that whenever we keep on training with no rest at all, that can be a bad thing. So for all you guys worried about that you are not able to train, let's say for 1 or 2 weeks, you shouldn't be worried at all. Now let's take a look at the difference between immobilization and staying active. To give you a perspective to see what happens if somebody stays in the hospital and stuff like that, what's going to happen with them. Because if we know in the worst case scenario that somebody gets hospitalized and then we look at what happens with the muscles, then we know what is absolutely the bare minimum that what we can expect when we don't train at all. So it is important to note that detraining and its effect on muscle mass depends on what you do during the detraining period. Are you staying active or are you going to be the couch potato? And immobilization happens when someone gets hospitalized and is not able to use the muscles. To make sure that you understand, strength decreases over the course of 3 weeks without movement. Without movement is in the sense that the leg is isolated in a cast, so you can't move the leg. And the strength that was affected is with 45 to 48% in the immobilized, and the non-immobilized leg, which you can use, showed a 3 to 8% decrease in strength. So also immobilization caused a 10 to 13% decrease of muscle size overall. Now, one other study by Marlou L. Dirks, she looked into bed rest for people who get sick and observed a lean tissue mass loss after a week of bed rest between 0.6 and 2.8 kilogram of lean tissue. Now, in this study, she also found that 3.2% was found in the quadriceps, so not using their legs, And on the whole body level, it was the 0.6 and 2.8 kilogram lean tissue. Now note that lean tissue doesn't mean 100% muscle mass, because there is much more involved with lean tissue. Now, your true hero of peace, satellite cells. If we had to talk about growing muscles, we have to talk about satellite cells. And let me explain. So these cells are resting on the muscle fibers to be awakened once muscle gets damaged. And in order to become active, you have to lift weights and things that would create muscle tears. So this is exactly what we can see on the right. On the upper right, these are the satellite cells, the green stuff jellies that you see there. You see that they get activated by muscle injury or exercise. Then we see at point A that the muscle is actually the tube that you see, the orange tube, is actually teared up from the exercise. And then the satellite cell activates and goes down onto that tear. Once the tear starts to take place, the satellite cell awakens and starts the process of repairing the damaged muscle, creating a new sheet of muscle. This is also what we call hypertrophy or muscle growth. This is how muscles grow. And there's one important thing to note here. These satellite cells, although sleeping, are specific warehouses of important agent powerhouses. And when I refer to agent powerhouses, is actually what they call myonuclei, but I don't want to get into the jargon. So let's say satellite cells, those green jelly stuff you see on the right corner above, these are warehouses of important agent powerhouses. So within them they have these important things that they can do something with. And what it can do is it can donate one of these agent powerhouses that they store once the muscle gets repaired on the particular spot. And so what happens is that the spot which now has been recovered is actually having a new powerhouse for more growth. So the larger the muscle becomes, the more of these donated agents from satellite cells appear on the muscle itself. So if you think this was amazing, wait for it. But in this particular graph that you see right now, you see that the satellite cells goes in a cycle. Then it's on the, I'm looking at point B right now. It fuses to repair the tear of the muscle. Then it goes to point C. Now we have a regenerated muscle fiber. And you can see that it has donated one of the agents on that part of the muscle fiber who was torn up. It is now recovered. It's now bigger muscle. And guess what? The satellite cell goes back to the position to be awakened again. So now you can see that how one satellite cell can repair a muscle, donate something to manage itself, if you will, and leaves that spot to be taken care of. It has been believed that whenever muscle grows, the amount of what I call donated agents goes up. Like we said, that in order for muscle to grow, the larger it becomes, the more agents it has. So however, the belief was that when atrophy, muscle loss, would occur, that the amount of agents were also reduced. Because if muscle growth supports more agents, then it must be that when it reduces in size, it also should contain less of these agents, which suggests that muscle has no memory. So when we look at this particular picture, below is actually the muscle untrained. So whenever we go into the cycle, we see growth happening, the muscle gets thicker, and fusion of satellite cells donating their agents, then it's caused hypertrophy or muscle growth. And on top of it, we have a larger muscle now with more of these agents. Now, when we go further to the right, we see that whenever there is no training involved, the muscle would actually decrease in size. This is what we call atrophy or muscle loss. And it would therefore also lose these agents. And it would suggest that there is no memory. People are also interested if you would go on and off training, would it then be possible to pump new agents rapidly once you come back from a detrained state? And the answer was that no new agents were installed from this retraining pumping state. And it would have been amazing, of course, to benefit from detraining and retrain and pump new agents on the muscle and therefore constantly supporting growth. But there was something interesting once further studied. So they have seen that when once a detrained muscle gets back into exercising, there was a fast growth seen during the retraining period of 59%. And while the detraining itself didn't cause any loss of these installed agents, this suggests that rapid growth happens during retraining. And because of the current agents, old and new, were already there. So important to know is that regrowth was back to similar levels to the amount of agents before detraining. So these agents do remember how big the muscle was previously, and once retraining was executed after the detraining period, it would return to that old size again rapidly. So a new model consisted out of this. And as we can see on the left corner below, there's an untrained muscle. So then we train, then we get the activation of the satellite cells, they're gonna donate their agent, then we have muscle growth going to occur on the top, and then out of a sudden coronavirus happens, and then we are getting into a detraining period where no training is involved, but we know that the agents stay there, they don't get lost, even though muscle loss is happening. The agents stay there, and whenever we're going to get back into training mode again, the muscle will pump up to the previous state. It knows how big it was. Isn't that amazing? Now, this led to some scientists to find that there was a memory inside the agents and muscles. And they tested both natural and enhanced subjects to test it and see if there was in fact such a rapid regrowth after detraining. So it tells us actually two things, and I'm gonna explain. But as you can see, we have the red dash there, the group who used the testosterone, and we have the blue dash, which is the ones who didn't use, and they followed a 3-month washout. So there was nothing happening in those 3 months. But then they looked, okay, what happens when both of these groups start training again? So now you see these lines on the right side between week 13 and 15. And you see that the steroid group was growing rapidly up again. And that the natural group, if you will, was also growing but less rapidly. Which suggests that, hey, these muscles are actually remembering how big they were. And for you, important to know, week 13 to 15 there was no steroid used, therefore the 3-month washout period, so that would be washing out the testosterone effect. We can say that the testosterone group, the steroid group, was losing all the powers of the steroid, but it remembered how big the muscle was, and therefore we saw rapid regrowth from the steroid group. So it tells us two things about satellite cells and memory. Once muscles grow and satellite cells donate these so-called agents to the already existing agents on the muscle, this not only increases muscle size but also the amount of agents that stick around even when detraining or atrophy, muscle loss, is occurring. And these agents do remember the biggest state of the muscle, and therefore once you get back into the gym, it will rapidly regrow to that old remembered state. Now 2, which is more of a natural bodybuilding perspective of myself, people who have ever used doping, or in this case, extra testosterone, we're growing muscle bigger and bigger than naturally possible. But if we remember, the bigger the muscle, the more agents it has. And these agents won't get lost at all, even when one decided to go back from enhanced to natural again. Also, these agents remember how big muscle was before. So once you have used doping or steroids, you always have an advantage. This is the reason why you see a more rapid regrowth in the testosterone group on the right side of the picture. So it has been suggested that the possibility exists that the lifespan of these acquired new agents from training are pretty much permanent. So where it comes down to is this: don't worry about losing gains. The muscle machinery got you covered well, even when you lose size and muscle. The machinery remembers very well how big it was. And once you decide to make love again with iron, you will rapidly find your old state again, making further progress possible in a short time span. So one thing to remember here, the detraining may affect the glycogen stores to be dropped. The glycogen is stored carbohydrate inside the muscle. Okay, so whenever we eat carbohydrate or bread, whatever you want to call, the body will convert it into glucose, it will absorb, and it will store inside the muscles as glycogen. So now you know what glycogen is. Now, since glycogen per gram attracts approximately 3 grams of water, these drops in stored glycogen might give the impression that muscle has been lost? Well, it is the glycogen and water retention giving this illusion. Yes, you will appear smaller, but this has nothing to do with the lost muscles in the first place. So once training will be introduced again, the glycogen will replenish with its water content, so you'll be big again fast. Don't get lost in the first 2 weeks of no training. So, why detraining can be a good thing. As fitness fanatics, we are trying to optimize every single bit of time to the amount of gains we are going to make. But is this a good thing all the time? Detraining for the win. There's a reason why people make use of deloads, it should say deloads, and tapers, also called reduced training periods. But it goes further than this. Now, we all know that resistance training is the one thing that grows muscles. And especially when we are starting out this process, it is enhanced and occurs rapidly during the early phases of training. So like a natural steroid phase. Yeah, it is actually like that. You know, whenever we start training, and we have never trained, and we touch a dumbbell, it's actually enhanced progress. But we also know that the longer you train, the harder it becomes to make further progression, both in terms of muscles and strength. So what do? We push even harder, and we have all the way thinking. But take a deep breath for a minute, and this is not what we should do. In order for muscle to respond, it has to adapt to whatever you will give it. So how do we do that if the further progress becomes limited or suppressed? You have to implement detraining periods. This may cause the muscle adaptation response to return to the initial levels, and the effects of retraining on muscle growth are similar to those observed during the initial phase of resistance training. Read that again. Detraining periods may cause the return of muscle adaptation response to initial levels similar to those training during the initial phase of resistance training. So, Netflix and chill. You see, persistently overtaxing the body's resources with excessive training and insufficient recovery ultimately leads to an overtrained state, increasing catabolic processes and reduction of anabolic processes with a corresponding decrease in muscle growth, for example. But this can be avoided with breaks from training. And a study showed that a 3-week break from training at the midpoint of a 15-week program did not interfere with muscular adaptations. So the possibility is there that in trained individuals that incorporating brief periods of detraining can restore anabolic responsiveness again of a trained muscle. So this is also exactly what I experienced with CrossFit. I was actually quitting bodybuilding for quite some time. 4 months I did CrossFit just to spice up my game, whatever. And then was getting back inside the gym doing bodybuilding training again. And I was getting a crazy response on my body. It was growing like crazy. And I was like, geez, where is all this coming from? You know? And there was one solution. And once I was reading about everything that was involved because what I actually did was detraining my bodybuilding training style, right? For instance, if you go to the gym and work out with weights and then you go running for a couple of months and leave out the whole training, it's not the same. So in a sense, I was detraining and then I was getting back into bodybuilding training again. So now my body probably has totally rested. It was activating all the anabolic responses again to training, and that was clearly to me what happened. So what about reduced weight training? Now, all that we have discussed so far is with the focus on having no training at all and complete rest from the gym. Chances are you are not willing or going to rest, even though the data shows a 2 to 4 weeks does not result in both strength or muscle loss and might even improve performance because stress levels dissipate. Now, let's take a look at what is important for resembling a gym setting and what is important in order to do this correctly. And before we're getting into the specifics, I do want to mention, like before, that it is easier to mimic a training environment with isolation exercises. So I don't see an actual problem in this one, other than your own creativity. So therefore, I'm looking at the exercises with a more compound kind of movement, where heavy weights are often used, like things like a squat, bench press, overhead press, stuff like that. So how much is needed to prevent muscle loss? In order to see how much is enough for muscle retention, we have to look at what is minimally needed during these times of gym lockdowns. Now, although I would not exclude the fact that You can still make gains at home if you have a home gym. Lucky you, keep on them gains. But those not so fortunate having a home gym, it therefore is important to look at what you need to do to preserve the muscles in the first place in terms of reduced weight training. So in one study, they have shown that after a 16-week training program, followed by a detraining and maintenance training phase where a percentage of the previous 16 weeks program was used to see how much was needed and to retain resistance training adaptations both in young and old adults. They did this in 3 different groups. Group 1 detrained, so no exercise at all. Group 2 performed volume that was 1/3 of the previous 16 weeks of training. So instead of training 3 days legs a week, they did 1 day a week. Group 3 did 1/9 of the volume from the previous 16 weeks. Instead of training 3 days, they did 1 day a week. Plus, they performed 1 set instead of 3. Group 1 lost all of the gained muscle mass within 8 weeks, no training. Group 2 maintained muscle mass, and Group 3, their muscle mass was also being retained, but started to decline after 16 weeks of training, suggesting that 1/3 volume maintenance led to continued muscle growth and strength gains. Note that this was observed in the lower body, and the initial strength training program consisted of 3 leg workouts, so it was mainly leg focused. So in one other study, they looked at both strength and muscle retention when it comes to reduced weight training. The first 8 weeks were normal training conditions, and the following 8 weeks was set up in a reduced training period. Now they found that lowering 50 to 57% of volume load were able to maintain previous training-induced adaptations. But the group who didn't train at all after 8 weeks normal training decreased strength with 20% and muscle 5%. And they concluded also that no training at all after 4 weeks results in both strength and muscle loss. And they say, our study, along with Bickett et al. And Trappe et al., suggests that in order to maintain strength performance and muscle morphological gains following a standardized strength training program, training volume load during reduced strength training schemes should reach a minimum threshold to preserve muscle adaptation regardless of training frequency. And the findings of this present study suggest that a reduction of 50 to 60% in training volume load performed once a week can retain the functional and morphological adaptations obtained following a regular strength training program in untrained male. So in other words, it seems to be that frequency in regards to muscle retention is less important, but a minimum volume load should be looked for. And also, it is important to understand that regular weight training is different in all humans. Now, your regular training in terms of volume, intensity, and frequency which is different from another person. So make sure you take into account your own regular training. Hence the reason why you shouldn't just take all the home workouts for granted, which you can find everywhere. The aim here is to mimic first the workout itself and find a way to maintain volume on the most effective way possible. So now that we have volume and frequency out of the way, we still need to look into the important factor of intensity, which we will discuss further. So, home workouts for muscle retention. Damn, ain't that a strong boy? Lifting some wheels, I guess, from a car, I don't know. So, the factors involved with training in terms of volume, intensity, and frequency are both all important when it comes down to progress or maintaining training-induced adaptations. Now, here's what we know when it comes down to adapting to a non-gym environment. And remember, the goal here is to mimic the regular training as much as possible with the parameters needed to not lose muscle or make further progress. We are going to discuss the following things: volume, intensity, frequency, repetition duration, and rest. So, volume. Keep 33.33 till 50% of volume from the regular training program for both strength and muscle related retention, okay? This is the bare minimum. And chances are that you're looking for making further progress rather than staying safe. Volume is easily influenced when increasing frequency, but sets can also add up. When there is no possibility in resembling or mimicking exercises, this loss of volume must come from exercises that can be done for the particular muscle. Okay. However, it is important to understand that progress in terms of volume needs to increase over one's whole training career. So in these desperate times, you want to do enough to keep muscle mass and don't want to solely focus on just making constant progression even at home, okay? Now, when progress is still your main goal, and not only that of muscle retention, the amount of sets should be kept at 10 to 20 sets per week per muscle, and based on current volume, of course. But it shouldn't exceed the 20 set mark per week per muscle. And remember, this applies when things are done correctly in terms of training. So these recommendations would be applicable when the goal is further progress and not muscle retention alone. Okay. So intensity. Body of research suggests to stick with a 6 to 12 and 12 to 20 reps for both creating mechanical tension and metabolic stress. These are both factors important in muscle growth. Don't want to stress you enough with these terms, but just know that these things are important. To make sure you are not forgetting to work hard in your home, it would be wise, whatever rep range you're working with or working in, get into muscle failure, okay? Make sure to bring it into muscle failure every single set. 50% of 1 rep max is indicating for full activation of all types of muscle fibers. Now, muscle protein synthesis, which is a process of building and repairing muscles, seems to be blunted with everything less than 60% of the 1 rep max when training is not carried out of failure. So when you use higher reps and therefore lower intensities, you have to make sure that muscle failure is really happening. And also a study showed greater muscle protein synthesis at 30% of 1 rep max than 90% of 1 rep max when it is brought to failure and volume was equal. And this is important because it sets a minimum for the percentage of 1 rep max you can be using for retaining or even building muscles. It would be best if you mimic also the weight as close as possible, meaning you should be trying to get close to the weights you have been using in the regular training regimen. Of course, there will be some exercises you just can't do, but try to do your best in doing the most you can. Thinking of abundance is better than thinking of problems. Now, a side note, in terms of practicality, whenever you have been doing deadlifts, squats, bench presses, overhead presses, rows, and such compounds, the aim would still be mimic the exercise. There's only one big but. If you've been using a rep range target below 5 reps, this would suggest your aim was more strength related. Now, although muscle growth can still be seen in lower reps, but in all honesty, in terms of practicality, I think it would not be wise to mimic these weights and rep targets for creative home workouts. And the reason is simple. You've been trained and used the barbell training inside a gym setting. If you have to change the dynamics of these exercises with total different approaches, the risk is too big for mimicking the same weight, the same rep target with different dynamics. It doesn't make sense. So in other words, please don't try to put a freezer on top of your neck to resemble a squat because you wanted to mimic in terms of weight and movement. But what I should recommend is that you still try to do these exercises, but within a 6 to 15 rep max range. Yes, you might lose some neuromuscular strength, but remember, it comes back quickly once entering the gym again, and you're lowering the rep target with that, of course. So let's get into frequency. Frequency might be important if volume is at the level of an advanced trainee. Oftentimes I hear people say, I train 6 days a week, but they have just started weight training or fitness. At 6 days a week, guys, it's the level that I'm on right now after 14 years. So hence the reason why I say, for advanced trainees. But volume seems to trump frequency. Note that frequency also influences weekly volume. Let's say you're doing a bench press 1 time a week with 3 sets, but you're gonna up that with 2 times a week for chest days, and then you have doubled already. If the sets is the same, you've doubled your volume. So as we have seen in the study discussed earlier, trainees were going from a 3-day-a-week leg training to a 1-day-a-week leg training, and this drop in frequency, of course, of 2 days automatically lowers weekly volume by 30% if everything was the same, so reps, sets, and things like that. 33.3% to be exact. But my guesses are you are not only training legs, but also other body parts, so even more overall volume is present in the training program. Therefore, doing all the volume in just one day would be like moving a mountain in a day. And it's not gonna happen. So spreading out volume per muscle group is advised, and hence the reason why I suggest you to mimic your current protocols in regular training in terms of days programmed, okay? So if you've been training for 5 or 6 days a week, it doesn't make sense that you would be changing that to 1 or 2 days a week if you want to make progress, further progress, okay? We have more time than ever right now with these current lockdowns. So it will not make sense to me that you're gonna say, yeah, but I'm gonna work out less now. You have more time, so you have more time to complete your workout that you were already doing, right? So that would be my best guess here. Now remember, less training can be done when your goal is to preserve muscle, but when you want to proceed with the progress and making gains, you are simply saying, I need to keep up with my regular training volume, and this is for sure that you need to spread it out. Now, to make sure we minimize muscle loss, volume must be that of 30 to 50% of weekly volume. But for those who are not looking just to be safe and really want to make progress, no matter what, volume must be equated to the volume of the regular training program. And if done correctly, rest between muscle groups should be 48 to 72 hours to allow full recovery. Note that a home workout doesn't mean easy stuff, okay? Hence the reason why I say if done correctly. So at least train your muscle groups 2 times a week is recommended. So although volume seems to trump frequency in preserving muscle, frequency is still of importance when it comes down to hypertrophy, so muscle growth. So repetition, duration, and rest. We can be pretty brief on this one. 1 to 3 seconds per rep should be employed, and a rep consists of 3 phases. It is a concentric phase, it is an isometric phase, and it is an eccentric phase. For example, 3-second rep would be 1 second concentric, a 0-second isometric, and a 2-second eccentric. If you want to look up these terms on Google, you can find what the concentric movement is, the isometric, and the eccentric. But basically, it is when you do a dumbbell curl, when you lift up, that one is concentric. Isometric would be when it is still, and eccentric is when you're lowering the dumbbell down, okay? Make sure that no rep goes beyond 10 seconds. For example, 5 seconds concentric with 0 seconds isometric, 5 seconds eccentric, and this will become detrimental, not only in terms of benefits, but also in terms of lost volume. In terms of rest, a brief advice, 1 to 2 minutes between sets is the minimum. Now, especially with mimicking of compound movements, sure, a 200 kilogram deadlift is harder to rest from than a 100 kilogram deadlift. So that's the reason why I say 1 to 2 minutes minimum is the way you should be doing it. Now, the juicy stuff. The program set up for home workouts. Mr. Bean here, getting jacked. So let's proceed with step number 1. Calculate your normal training volume per muscle per week and or per day based on last week's regular training data. So that's the reason why I'm always locking down my trainings. I'm always writing down my trainings to make sure that I know my numbers, and this is the reason why. For example, let's say you train chest 2 times per week, and on those training days you perform 1 bench press exercise, 1 incline dumbbell, and 1 pec deck. So the chest workout would be here, bench press 100 kilogram, reps 8, sets 3, equals a volume of 2,400 kilograms lifted for the bench press. Incline dumbbell press, 30 kilograms, 12 reps, and so on. So the total chest volume for that session would be 7,080 kilograms. Now let's assume you have this exact training 2 times a week. The volume per session would be times 2, and it would be 14,160 kilogram volume load for the overall chest per week. So this means you now have a number or a volume target to work with. You now know how much you are doing currently, right? Now do this for all muscle groups and preferably per day, since we are going to mimic the workout itself. And I have to give some explanation to this because it is fun to spread out a total number of weight lifted for a particular muscle group, but if we're going to mimic the exercise to get the same progression and the same setup, then we preferably want to do it per day, volume per day. So step number 2, decide the amount of minimum volume needed to maintain muscle mass. As we have seen, the minimum amount that should be performed in terms of volume should be at least 1/3 to a half of regular training volume. So if we know that the total weekly volume of the chest is stated at 14,160 kilograms, we should be minimally try to achieve 33.33%, which equates 4,720 kilograms volume load weekly for the chest. Or in the upper level, to be sure, 50% is 7,080 kilograms of volume load weekly for the chest. So the range for maintaining muscle is between 4,720 and 7,080 kilograms, but I would say shoot for the middle, just to be sure, 41.66% or above. So if we have the lower end of the 33.33% and we're gonna sum that up with the upper limit of 50%, then we have 11,800 kilograms. We divide it by 2 to get the middle, which is 5,900 kilograms till 7,080 kilograms, which is the middle to upper range. And the reason for choosing the in-between numbers covers up for the 33.3% being the minimum. And I like to be sure and on the safe side and not the minimum needed with the possible chance to do less. Now, step number 3 is to mimic exercises and choose. In this step, it is your job to see what you can do to mimic the regular training protocol. And this means that you have to find a way to resemble, for example, the bench press. Now, to see what we can do to mimic, we have to look what looks like performing the bench press. Now, push-up seems to be close in mimicking the bench press. Now, for the incline, it is important to understand that we perform this exercise with an angle, right? That's the reason why we have an incline bench. So to mimic this exercise, we can use a push-up with our legs elevated, creating an angle for mimicking incline. For the pec deck, it becomes a bit harder to mimic, but those with dumbbells can do rollouts to the side to mimic the pec deck. But when you don't have dumbbells to be mimicking this exercise, you can be creative. For example, using 2 towels and slide over the ground, creating a similar kind of movement pattern. Or transitioning into a fly exercise can be done as well. This is how you should mimic and resemble your exercises. And this way of training is making sure that we adhere to the SAT principle, and that is specific adaptations to imposed demands, also known as the principle of specificity. This principle suggests that all the training done should be focused or come close to the goal of our outcome. So your goal or outcome is to make further gains before the corona craze started to happen, right? You wanted to make further gains, progress, and stuff like that. Now, to achieve this, you likely have a program to execute on. So why deviate when we can mimic? Get it? That's why I see a lot of people now doing crazy other stuff than they would be doing in the first place. I see people doing high reps, extreme low weights. Well, this shouldn't be the way it should be done. If we want to maintain to our muscle mass in the first place, it is easier, but if we want to keep making progress, we shouldn't be doing completely different stuff because it wouldn't adhere to the SAT principle. So, step number 4, deciding rep maxes for exercises, part number 1. We need to know our 1 rep max to decide which load we are able to use and also decide which parameters we can use with it. Because a 30% of 1 rep max must be executed differently than an 80% of 1 rep max. And although these numbers might work for heavier loads, it is important to know that when the percentage of 1 RM becomes lower and therefore more reps are performed, the more likely it is the formula goes off track. So I see a lot of people use a 1 RM calculator, which can be good up until 6 reps max, but after that it becomes a little bit, the formula doesn't really work very well with that, okay? So therefore we might want to use percentage of 1 RM based on both reps performed with the amount of reps left in the tank, called reps in reserve or RER, to get a more precise measure. So You might be testing your home movements with the total amount of reps you can perform with a certain load, like a 6 rep max or a 15 rep max. And because we already know that we can do this inside the gym, so let's say a bench press for 8 reps maximum with 100 kilogram load and no reps left in the tank, we can easily adjust or influence the weight at home to mimic the same 8 RM. Because think about it, when you can perform 100 kilogram bench press with 8 RM in the gym and to resemble at home, you fill a bag with water bottles to put on your back for push-ups, and now you start doing the testing and it comes out that with the bag you can maximally do 20 reps max. Then you know that the weight of the extra water bottles on your back is too light. So now you put another 5 bottles a liter each in your backpack and you do the test again. Now you hit a 10 rep max, showing you that you have done a good job in mimicking the bench press, the correct load for the target reps you did in the gym. And voila, you've now kicked regular bodyweight push-ups that you all see in the other programs hard in the balls. And by the way guys, I have completely written out this on the dias, and the reason being is simple. If you want to make screenshots, make it, okay? And that's the reason why I've made these long text of slides to make sure that you can screenshot every single thing of it. So step 4, deciding rep maxes in exercise part 2. Here we have a table that I use for my clients now to make their programming. And what we can see here is a table where we both have the reps performed with reps in reserve on the left side. So let's say I have I've done a bench press, I've done my push-up with the bag, okay, I have 12 reps. So we look at the table and the top, 12 reps, but it felt like I could do probably 3 more. So we go down to 3 and we see that you are working on a 60% of 1 rep max. And I've highlighted this in my spreadsheets in green. So I make sure that these are, everything in green here is the rep max that represents a specific intensity so that I don't have to go to failure. What we have seen, everything below 60%, we have to get into failure. That's what the research says. Everything in the red area, if it comes out, if I calculate these, I have to bring those sets into muscle failure. If I'm not doing it, I'm not creating the correct response. And everything on the left side in the black, by the way, I have left blank or black, and the reason being is, like I said before, we don't want to mimic the heavy ass weight exercises, and we just want to make sure we are bringing in the higher range. Okay, so we don't want to mimic a squat between the 1 and 5 rep max because it would be harmful. We are changing the dynamics, the movement patterns, and we don't want to risk, injuries in this case. So therefore, that's the reason why I'm suggesting going to a higher rep range with that particular exercise, but still doing squats. Now, step number 5, loading interpretation, part 1. Now, in this part, I'm going to explain how you should interpret the weight you will be using at home. This is my thinking process, okay? This is how I will program my clients and also for myself. So let's take a look at the bench press. When we mimic the bench press, can I use heavy things around the house to perform this movement? Now, if yes, perfect. And if not, hold on. Now, the first that comes to my mind when mimicking the bench press is to do push-ups, or even better, when possible, ring push-ups. Now, overloading push-ups is possible with a weighted backpack, but easier with a weighted ring push-up because the weight is hanging on a belt below you. So in terms of balance, it's easier. But let's say you have nothing and push-ups is your only option. And when performing a push-ups, our body weight is not 100% on top of the chest muscle because your feet also holds a bit of that weight, of course. And with a bench press in the gym, you are laying down on the bench with the body completely rested. So your feet doesn't hold a bit of the weight that is on the barbell, right? So you can't say, therefore, that, hey, I'm a 100 kilogram male body weight, so that equals a 100 kilogram push-up. It doesn't work this way, pal. So what you can do is lift up your legs, elevated, resting higher than your chest, and transfer more weight on the chest. Now, I've seen numbers ranging from 50 to 75% of body weight will be used during regular push-ups. Hence the reason why I say I'm 100 kilogram body weight, so that equals 120 kilogram push-ups. It doesn't work like this. And when assisted by the knees, or when you're using your knees to do push-ups, it drops even further to 36 and 45% of body weight. Now, find your target rep max and test various exercises to be sure that the correct weight matches the correct rep range and intensity. And if we tend to do regular push-ups with a 50% usage of own body weight, note that I use the lower end of body weight because I like to be sure. Now this means for a 100 kilogram man, he would be using 50% or 50 kilogram intensity load. And this represents 50% of his regular training bench press load. Now note that the 100 kilograms bench press is the same as the body weight. It's a little bit hard to dissect, but remember that the 100 kilogram man using 50% of his body weight is also representing 50% of the bench press he could do, right? So if we had a chance to use a weighted vest of 50 kilograms in our push-up, we would theoretically using the same load, and chances are you not have this. But let's say you can now use a backpack and load 20 kilograms extra. Now you have a 70 kilogram loading, which is 70% of regular training load. Now, even though this is 30% less than your gym bench press, it still adheres to all the principles I have just explained. Now, let's say the 70 kilograms at 70% load is exact. Now, you probably can do more reps at this weight than you would be able at 100 kilograms at the 100% load, like a 1 rep max. So the last 30% will be made up for with extra reps. And you see how this works. We have also seen that everything below 60% of 1 rep max becomes important to bring exercises into muscular failure. Whenever a plus 60% of 1 rep max is utilized, you don't have to get into muscle failure, but close to is recommended to make sure you're not doing too light work. This is also the reason why I have colored this graph with the ranges. So this was an aha moment that I just popped into my head during the setup of this slide. And I wanted to make sure that I was writing it down and present it to you, because these are golden nuggets, you know. So during writing all this out, a striking thought came to me, creative mind at work. But what if we could mimic compound movements easier without heavy loads? Is that possible? Absolutely yes. So let's say your squat is 100 kilograms and you want to mimic this. Good luck on that one without a squat rack, bro. But what if you transfer this exercise into unilateral movements? Therefore, we can use lower loads and are more likely to mimic the correct intensity. Cha-ching! This is your secret in resembling compounds. Now, back to steps number 7. Should be saying step number 6. Okay, never mind. The first thing you need to be doing is running a test week. And all the steps before is giving you a structure and idea what you should be doing. Since it is important to see what weight can be lifted, you should test out things with rep maxes. And after this, you have to see if you are loading enough for the muscles to retain in the first place. Now, if loading intensity is correct, perfect. But if loading is not correct, you should be adjusting the weight so you are at least lifting plus 30% of 1 rep max load. And we know that the load is good if it comes close to the exercises we intend to mimic. Now let's say your dumbbell press for chest is 20 kilograms per dumbbell and you would normally do 12 rep maximum, so 12 RM and RIR is 0 inside the gym, but now you're having to lay on the floor and perform presses with a water gallon, which most of the time equals 18 to 20 liters, which is also 80 to 20 kilograms. And you manage to get in the same exact 12 rep maximum with a reps in reserve of 0. So no reps left in the tank. Well done. You have just mimicked perfectly well your dumbbell presses. Your test for this exercise has succeeded. And from now, you know that you can progress by doing more reps every training session. Note, it doesn't really matter if you are a couple of reps shy from your target rep range, but obviously, when you can do a 12 rep max in the gym with X weight, you should think twice when your home workout gives you 40 RM. Way too light, pal. Step number 7. So once you have finished all testing for your protocols, within all the mimicked exercises, with the correct intensity, volume and frequency, you can then start progressing further, like you did in the gym week by week. So worried by coronavirus to take you away from the gym a long time? Well, think again. I want to thank you all for watching this presentation and staying along with me. It has been a long presentation that I know. I hope it has shown you a new way of thinking, how we can hold on to our muscles in the first place, and what is minimally needed in holding on to those muscles, and what is minimally needed to make further progress when it comes to our body. So that's the main point here that I wanted to make. And what also is interesting, I hope that you see why these home workouts we can find all over the internet is actually not sufficient enough to the goals we have for ourselves when it comes to our body, our health even, in doing that. So I hope this helped out. Thanks for staying with me, and I wish you a pleasant week. Stay bright, stay healthy, keep on working out, and do it properly. That's the only way. And hold on to these big boys, of course. Okay, ladies and gents, peace out. In the next videos that I will be making is how to resample or to mimic exercises inside your home, and how to do it creatively so you make sure that you are using the correct intensity, load, whatever is needed. Thank you for watching, and up until the next time, cheerio.